Ladies and gentlemen and friends beyond the binary, welcome to Step Back. No, wait, that's not a thing anymore. The Monday Discourse for today, 7/11/2022. Hi, I'm your host, Tristan. Hello. Happy Monday. Who we got in the chat now? Jennifer Love Skewit, Pim, Meow Meow, and D-Quack. Haven't seen you in a bit. Paul, Polymathic, cool. Attila, cool. All right, full house. Hello, everybody. How are we doing? So yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Tristan. I'm the host of Step Back, and I'm also the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens. I stream on Mondays at noon, which is what you're watching right now. I go by he, him pronouns, and you can support my work if you want to by going to patreon.com/stepbackhistory, where for as little as 84 cents a month, you can see videos early and get updates on everything that's going on, so that you see what's all happening under the hood. I will also, actually, I'm going to add this. I'm also now able to say that Step Back has channel memberships. So if you don't want to use Patreon, if you want to use channel memberships, you totally can now. It's the same as Patreon. When you sign up, you're going to get the exact same for the amount that you pay, you're going to get the exact same rewards. But if you prefer to use the channel memberships, feel free to do so. If you have Amazon Prime, if you get one free Twitch Prime subscription for every month. If you choose Step Back, I'll be very grateful. But please do use it, because you're basically giving a independent creator money that is Amazon's money, basically. So it's no extra cost to you. It's already in your Amazon Prime membership, so helps out. And of course, if you do have a little bit of change, anything like, super chats, bits, Twitch subscriptions are all very much welcome and appreciated, but of course, nowhere close to necessary. So all that, my latest video, which came out a little under a week now, that was on what's it called? On anti-LGBTQ violence and terrorism and all that kind of step backy type stuff. My next video, I do not know what it's going to be on yet. It really depends upon how much progress I make on my Russia video this week. But my guess is that it's probably going to be another shorter video. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out soon. If you want to submit questions to the stream, I'm going to put a link in the chat. It's going to lead to a Google form. When you fill it out, it gets added to the question queue. So if you want your question read on the air, then here's the link. Put it in the chat right now. And so yeah, just go there, ask your question, and it'll show up in a database that I'm looking at. I hang on to all questions for a month, so if I don't get to today, I will very likely get to it before it expires. If you are new, if this is your first time watching the stream, please make yourself known in the chat. We have a very supportive and awesome chat community, so please say hello. Make yourself known. Shout your name out loud. What does the Ritos on my shirt mean? It's a parody. So it's a Star Trek shirt. Is the fast answer, but it was so one of the things they made is that on Star Trek Discovery they showed that the crew of Discovery get disco t-shirts that just say disco on it, and then in an episode of Lower Decks they parodied that by having people have Ritos t-shirts, and they sell Ritos t-shirts. So I got myself one of them. How's the new baby? He's good. 6 months old, getting really smart, getting really clever, getting pretty fun. And yeah, he's getting huge. He's going to the doctor this week, so we're going to see. He's going to the doctor where he's going to get some more vaccines, like you do. but also it's what's it called? It's also it was on one of the season 2 episodes, I believe so. Yeah. He's gonna get some more vaccines, and we're gonna be able to weigh him and see how much he's gotten bigger, because he's gotten so big, and he's like starting to learn how to stand. Kind of. So it's getting really fun. All right. How is any other things in the chat? What's going on? My 15-month-old hasn't tried to walk yet. We are worried she may have some developmental issues. Wish us luck tomorrow. We have a doctor's appointment. Best of luck, yeah. What's my favorite episode of Futurama? Ooh. That is a good question. There's a lot of good ones. I really loved the episode that had B. Arthur in it. That was pretty fun with Femputer. I really liked that one. That was the one with Snoo Snoo, if I remember too, and about the line how I femunicate your menformation. So that was a good one. I really liked. There's one where Bender gets stuck in space and he like becomes god to an entire civilization. That one's really good. Geez, what's another really good one? The one with Robot Hell. That one's good. Yeah. So, yeah. Fry's dog. Oh, yeah. Actually, on that note, another really good one is the one where when Futurama can go sad, and it can go like emotional in like a really hard way, and they always do really good on that. Fry's dog is a good one. Another really good one is the one that's about Fry's brother. That one's really good. The one about Fry's brother going to the moon and stuff. We're going to Mars. Man, that one's got a really good ending. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry if I'm going to be yawning. I am working on 2 nights in a row of only getting about 4 hours of sleep. So, take that out for however you will. But, yeah. Busy times. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we got some questions. We got a bunch. First question we got here is, do I use public transit or ride bicycles regularly? So I do ride the bus fairly often. My city does have a bus system that I use whenever I need to go anywhere. I don't have a car. I don't even have a driver's license. I don't have a bike, but I am sort of working on. I'm kind of like thinking about buying an e-bike, which is sort of like an electric powered bicycle to do things that most people use their car for. But, those can be expensive, so I'm going to be, thinking about it real carefully and, working on my way up and stuff like that. So I am going to get myself an e-bike, probably with those sort of like trailers you can get for an e-bike that's for carrying a kid, so I can take my baby around. But also I can do stuff like go grocery shopping by filling it full with groceries. So that's my hope. But I don't have one yet. But I'm at some point I'm going to be going to there's like a bicycle co-op, and they might have more information about how to get one and what kind of things I should look out for and all that kind of stuff. Does London, Ontario have a train station? Yes. yes, there's a Via Rail station. Actually, London is basically like built around a train station. We have like 2 rail lines that go through the middle of the city, and sometimes we'll block traffic for like a long time as trains are moving through it. But the thing is that Canada's car-centric society has resulted in our train system being very slow and very expensive. So almost nobody uses it is the problem. When was the last time I ate donuts? Interesting question. I had one earlier today when I was out for a walk. Not like a fancy one, just like a sort of plain one. I don't really get them all that often, but I was going and picking up cat food, and I happened to be close to a Timmy's. And so I was like, okay, you know, I'll take this. I need some. I needed some little bit of energy to do the walk because it was really hot out, and something to dip in the coffee, you know. As an American, I feel like moving to Canada to escape Republicans would be like moving to Austria to escape the Nazis. Do you think that's accurate? Maybe. I feel like the region I live in is like one. This is just a joke from one of the scripts that I'm writing right now. But we are one underground reservoir in the U.S. depletion away from developing weapons of mass destruction. So, yeah, I do think that the second that water's going to be the reason that Canada gets invaded by the U.S. Leftists online are a little scarce. Yeah, that's true. Hey, thank you for the $2.79 super chat. Was the Strange New Worlds finale great or what? Yeah, it was really good. I thought the idea of a inverse It's a Wonderful Life is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's a great finale. I loved it. It had so many things. It had the movie era uniforms, the sort of red jacket Star Trek uniforms that I love so much. I'm glad to have seen that again. I think it's been a while since I've seen one of those. Not so sure I'm super... I feel like I'm going to have to see more of it, but I'm not super sold on the new Captain Kirk casting. The new guy seems a little bit too skinny, if I were to be perfectly honest. It's just doesn't. He seems like he's a little bit too scrawny to be Captain Kirk, and also he didn't have the same sort of like weird cockiness and a sort of casual attitude that Kirk had. But you know, that could also be because of the alternate timelines and whatever bullshit, and that when it comes to seeing Kirk for real, that he'll be like, you know, he'll be more like himself, if that makes sense, more confident. And have more of a dad bod is the real hope. The other thing about invading Canada, about moving to Canada to escape America, is that most of the bullshit that America gets up to, Canada is only about like one leadership cycle behind. Like we still have like, you know, it's much smaller and they're a lot more marginalized now, but like, we have like, you know, critical race theory freakouts people. We have like we eventually got that like anti-lockdown politics came through, and like, you know, all that kind of stuff came to come together. Has Canada removed their public spaces similar to the U.S.? Yes, but not as much. In the U.S., it does feel like you are completely surrounded by, in the land of the free, you're completely surrounded by fences and no trespassing signs. That's less of a thing here, but it's not a thing, I guess, is what I should say. Canada's wilderness and death factory for American invaders. Maybe. Canada's still a fairly urban society. We live all pretty close to the border. Isn't Jordan Peterson Canadian? Yes. Yes, he was a U of T professor. There's actually a surprising amount of like shitty right-wing people on the internet who happen to be Canadian. I know. I had to vote in the mayoral election in Toronto where freaking what's her name? White nationalist ran. Faith Goldie was on the ballot, and I had to be like, oh god, how is this a thing? The next question I got here is, what's the best Star Trek TV show? And the answer to that, I would say, is, it's Deep Space Nine. That's the only. Who's worth Gavin McGinnis or Jordan Peterson? I'd say Jordan Peterson just for the fact that he's had such a much bigger reach. But back on this question from Sam about Deep Space Nine, that's like not even a question. It's like by far, it is the perfect mix of everything that, like, it's a perfect mix of serialized versus episodic content where every episode does have a thing that happens that you can enjoy, but also everything builds towards a story. There's a lot of really satisfying multi-year character arcs that really pay off in great ways. There's it does probably more legwork doing world building for the Star Trek universe than any other show, and also has a lot of fun. So overall, and also kind of gives more complexity to the sort of universe. So I don't know if we'll ever top that unless like Ira Bear or something comes back and makes a new Star Trek show. I would say that though I would almost say though that Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds might be in my top 5 though. They are really, really good shows. So Strange New Worlds I did not have. I wasn't exactly dreading it, but I wasn't like super looking forward to it either. It was just like, oh, there's going to be a thing that happens and that'll be weird and I'll watch it. But like I wasn't like, really anticipating it. But it ended up being really good. It's one of the best things to come out of that strangeness, the just very weird place that was season 2 of Discovery. And it was really enjoyable. The first season was really fun. I never really like cared for TOS, and I really didn't like the sort of state of things in the 23rd century of the Star Trek universe is kind of like, oh, like whatever. I'm not like I'm not super sold on it, but I don't know. Strange New Worlds made it really fun, and the fact that they can do all sorts of cool stories is really enjoyable. Like the fact that they did the Freaky Friday episode. Like I was sold. Like I was already really enjoying the show, but when they did the Freaky Friday episode, I was like, oh, they're really gonna do all sorts of fun stuff with the show. Okay, I'm good. Yeah. And I feel like, if anything, the sort of new era of Star Trek is starting to find its feet in more of a way. Like Discovery found a pretty good like thing. It is its own thing. It's very unique, and I think that everyone would say that the show sort of it struggled for its first 2 seasons. I'm not to say that they were like bad. I'm not going to go as far as to say that they were bad, but they were like they changed showrunners a bunch, and the first 2 seasons were. Yeah, it was a little like just scattershot, I guess would be the answer. But then it kind of came together in a really came together in season 3, and I've been enjoying it ever since. I think it does show that there are some limits to the genre. Like there's limits to what Star Trek can do with like super. I think Picard also has this problem that there's limits to what you can do with the Star Trek format. That is, if you go like 100% serialized, because in many ways Star Trek is about exploring different cool ideas every episode, and if you go super serialized, you have to have like the one thing that's really exciting, like the one thing the season's built around, and that better be really, really good or really, really interesting, or else it's not going to function. Because like some Star Trek episodes, if the thing of the week is not interesting, you can just wait until next week. But if with Discovery, they had to sell the what was the last season's thing called, the like big vacuum cleaner that was like destroying planets, and like they had to really sell that. And while that would have been like kind of like a decent one episode or even a two-parter, the fact that the whole season had to be about it, the DMH I think it was called, maybe, or something like that. We want to watch, but I don't want to go through 2 seasons of mediocre stuff just to get to the good stuff. It's not so much mediocre. I would say that season 1 and 2 are good watches. They're not great, but they are good. I wouldn't say that they're mediocre. I would say, like, compared to most TV, it was above average. And there's some really good character work in those shows that I was surprised by. DS9 had some serialized stuff, but it wasn't dominating the story. Yeah, but like the thing about DS9 is that even when it was serialized, every episode was about something. It's like a lot of modern day TV, and Discovery and Picard had this, where the season was the only unit of story that you got, and so like you could always have like you would have like episodes of TV where nothing happens. Or nothing, or where like nothing, like you can't, like, this happens a lot with Netflix too, where like an entire hour of television can pass. You watch an entire episode of this show, and then if somebody asks you, hey, what was that episode about? You wouldn't be able to answer. It would always be like the Wheel of Time, descriptions of Wheel of Time books. It would just be every character continues to try and do something, but you wouldn't say this episode is about this. And I think that with television specifically, I think that it's weak storytelling if you can't point to an episode of a TV show and say, what was this episode about? What was the thing that happened in this episode? But thought season 2 Discovery was bad, actually. I mean, maybe. It was weird. But I like the whole thing about like a rogue AI trying to destroy the galaxy and like and it's some Section 31 shit. Like I thought it was cool. I thought like it was there. I was okay with it. It definitely was a bit too long for what it was, for how much plot you got, and that was obvious because they got distracted with a lot of side quests. But for what it was good. And because season 2 of Discoveries apparently was also like just backdoor pilots for at least 2 shows they want to develop, that makes sense too. So you have the burn notice format where there's this mini episodic story with a resolution plus a single step forward to the main serialized storyline. Yeah. What's it called? Battlestar Galactica was really good at that. And I think that should be what TV shows aspire to. And that's very much what Strange New Worlds did. Strange New Worlds managed to do episodic and serialized plot lines really, really well. The whole season didn't end up being about a single thing, which meant that you got to see like a lot of important things that are in TV shows. Like you get to, like, in my mind, Star Trek shows are very much about characters, right? They're about character stuff. Because it's ultimately even though it has aliens and spaceships and shit, it's about humanity. It's about humans and the better angels of our nature and our natural urge to explore and to be altruistic and to help others. That's the show's about. And I feel like I'm learning that in order to really be attached to characters on a show, like the cast of a show, you really need to have a lot of episodic stuff because you need to see them in a whole bunch of different situations. That's why, like, there's a great, like, the cast of Strange New Worlds, like, there's the cast of Strange New Worlds is amazing. Like, I fell in love with all of these characters. And like I couldn't even tell you half of the people on Discovery. I couldn't particularly care about any of them because like I mean there's a few decent Discovery characters, but because every season has to be just about the one thing, they don't really get the opportunity to like have like, you know, they don't get to have the T'Pril Spock Freaky Friday episode. They don't get to have the episode where Uhura and the engineer guy get stuck in a shuttle bay together, and they have to. The blind man can't use his tactile hands to solve the engineering problem, so he has to talk Uhura, who's a little cadet, through it, and he teaches her the value of like learning how to like make connections with others. That like you don't get that. You don't get those episodes. You don't get that if you have like, you know, a big serialized overall story, and that's why I think they miss out. They even somehow managed to have a holodeck episode, kind of, which I thought was great. Detmer is the only. Trying to remember which one Detmer is. Detmer, the sort of redheaded cyborg pilot. She's kind of cool. She's got the design of her character is very cool. I thought there's also it's like Owo or whatever, the sort of woman on Discovery on the bridge crew who comes from like this like 19th century era colony or whatever. And then in the latest season, she does that episode where she gets into a fucking like fight, like enters into like a freaking like prize fight against some huge alien. I also really like the if there's anybody in Discovery that I like legitimately like the only characters in Discovery that they put like legitimate effort into making you really really like and put them in different situations is the little LGBTQ pod that they have going on, the little queer family with what's it called, Dr. Culver and Hugh and Adira and oh, I can't remember what the other guy's name is. The Trill guy who came back from the dead. But like, oh, it's not like Discovery. I feel like Discovery is suffering from way too much of a nerd backlash, and it like I think history is going to be kinder to that show than Let's On, and it was trying to, yeah, Hugh, Stamets, Adira, and Gray. That's it. It's trying to do too many things, and it's a show that suffered from a lot of behind the scenes chaos that I think people don't really appreciate as much. But it does, when it does cool things, it does very cool things, and it does have some characters that I like legitimately think are great. Like I think Tilly is a great character. I think that the character design and the world building and the just like approachableness of what the hell's his name, Saru, is amazing. I every time Saru is on screen, I think it's like the coolest thing ever. Like there's a lot, and also just the whole building of like the 32nd century future I think that's all awesome. And I don't want to take that away, but yeah, I don't know. I think that it got Picard is another show that I'm like a little. That's probably, if there is any like, you know, modern Star Trek show that has problems, it's that one, because I don't know what it's trying to do, is the answer, and it got a little bit chaotic in the last season where I was struggling to figure out what their plan was for that season. Anyways. got some new questions. Let's see. Would it be a good idea to have countries rewrite their constitutions every 20 years or so to keep them from being so out of touch with societal changes? Talking about the U.S. Constitution in particular? Yes. 100%. Yeah. I think that the U.S.'s like religious reverence for their constitution will be their undoing. Even the Supreme Court being so utterly focused on what 18th and 19th century people thought about the issue is so broken, and the sort of religious reverence that the Constitution gets in the U.S. is very unhealthy, and that constitutions are a thing that should be regularly updated and rewritten to suit the changing political landscape. And to not do so is to not adapt to modern times, which can cause you to fall and further out of alignment. Really enjoyed your most recent video. Add to my documentary playlist. Oh, thank you. Alrighty. What are your thoughts on The Progressive Plantation by Lorenzo Camboa Irvin? Can't say I know anything about that. Sorry. What are my thoughts on the CPC leadership race? PP or Charest? I mean, I think it'd be very... what's it called? Jean Charest used to be my MP when I lived in Quebec. I think he's a fucking piece of shit. Because he he fucked over Quebecois students by raising tuition and causing political chaos. The fact that he's and also just the fact that he's going from being a liberal to literally trying to run for leader of the Conservative Party says everything about how trustworthy he should be. But I actually haven't followed I haven't really followed the Conservative leadership race because I haven't been following much news lately, mostly because of the baby and everything. But we'll see what happens. I don't anticipate. I mean, the thing about the Conservative leadership race is that I imagine that it's going to be a really big thing about whether they want to listen to their party base and basically go full scorched earth white nationalist and focus on all of these stupid social issues that their base actually really care about, or if they're going to try to do the very Canadian thing of all right, we're going to find another right of center liberal to run the party as they always have, to just be be basically almost identical to the liberals in every way except that they are blue, and which urgency of that actually comes through, but I don't know. I don't particularly know, but yeah. Okay, so if it's gonna be this Poilievre person, I don't know anything about him, except I think it was a big anti-lockdown guy, but I don't really know. I don't actually know too much about the CPC leadership race. Thoughts on the PPC big threat along with other far-right parties or no? I do think that the People's Party, so what that's a reference to is the People's Party of Canada, which was this basically neo-Nazi political party that showed up in the last two Canadian elections. The last election, they did kind of scarily well. They didn't get any seats, but they did scarily well, mostly because they became they leveraged themselves as the party of anti-vaccine, anti-lockdown, anti-mask stuff. something makes me think that that probably won't be an issue that they can leverage to their advantage in the next election, and that a lot of their surge in popularity is going to go away because Canadians don't really have that, like, you know, famous last words, but Canadians don't really have that same streak of extremism that the U.S. has, and that a lot of Canadians see their politics in less. Like a lot of Canadians, their politics is a lot lower in temperature, if that makes sense. And so, mostly because we've had two almost identical political parties run the country in its entire existence. So, that's sort of the that's sort of the thing. But like, I don't. I honestly, I thought that. Really like listening to the stream. It helps you get through the day. Thank you. Well, thank you, Al. I really thought that the CPC race was going to be Maxime Bernier trying to run for leadership and get himself back into the party and basically reunite the People's Party with the Conservative Party and go like, far right nationalist direction. But he decided not to go with that. And honestly, I think that's to his detriment because I think that the next election, the PPC is going to be very irrelevant. Like, I think that the only reason that they did as well in the last election is because they were just leveraging COVID. And, inshallah, the next election will not feature COVID. Will not be a factor, hopefully, or will be much less of a factor. So he was a Harper cabinet minister, crypto guy. Oh my goodness. I feel like a guy like that is going to walk the Conservative Party. Like, I feel like, what's it called? That's a guy who's going to, like, crypto right after the crypto crash and, like, associating with the Ottawa truckers. That is, like, a perfect recipe for the Conservative Party for all of those, like, sort of more centrist conservatives to just vote for the Liberals. And since every single Canadian election comes down to who can win the GTA, I don't think that's going to win the Conservatives any favors. But, I don't know. Because, like, the thing is, the Canadian right is not like the American right in some of that fashion, right? Voters in Canada are actually turned off by, like, vulgarity and, like, extremism, which is not the case in the US, but it's also the reason why Canada won't actually, like, do anything of any importance, because every politician knows that they will pay a political price if they do anything that approaches rocking the boat. And luckily for Canada, we have our far right is very divided because we have two factions of the far right, and both of them hate each other because of the language divide. So. Alrighty. Why are political affiliations so predictable based on whether or not you live in a rural area or an urban area? There's a lot of different reasons. One, living in those different regions give you different levels of priority, or different ideas of priority. They imply different sorts of jobs and different sorts of, and those sorts of jobs imply different levels of education. But that's not, that's not a necessary thing. The other thing too is that rural communities are a lot less diverse, and are also declining populations. The rural population has been declining for over 100 years, which means that there is this sense of that people in rural areas have this strong sense of decline and loss that isn't happening in urban centers. As like, the sort of empty parts of the country start to empty out even more. But also, like, poverty looks different in those different places. So, like, it leads to very different types of politics. And yeah, also, there's a lot more tribalism when you don't get exposed to different types of people. From a tiny town in northern Ontario, they voted NDP my whole life. Cool. Yeah. Is the tiny town northern Ontario by any chance like close to like an indigenous reserve or anything like that, or just happen? There is a lot more like there's a lot less liberal politics in rural areas as opposed to like more conservative. That is one thing that we don't learn a lot about, is that there's not a lot of just because the right dominates a lot in rural areas in the U.S. That's not universally true. And in many ways, a lot of that is more anti-liberal politics than it is actually like seriously right-wing politics. And yeah, don't forget that also a lot of rural jobs are some of the few like really strong unionized jobs that are left, which means that there's also like the labor movement is also very big in the sort of left wing. The NDP used to dominate Saskatchewan, with the Saskatchewan Party no longer. Yeah, that is true. The NDP started in Saskatchewan. What's it called? My family. I have family in Saskatchewan, so I've been there many times in my life. And yeah, it's sad to see. But yeah, I've spent actually like quite a few of the summers of my childhood I spent living in Saskatchewan. In a pretty small town too, so. Okay. Weird question. As a European, why the American conservatives seem to hate the European project and the EU at large? I think mostly because the talking points that they get about the EU, if they get any talking points at all, tend to come from Eurosceptics. Plus, there's in this sort of in American politics, especially in American right-wing politics, there's also a strong anti-EU UN stance, because they think it's a threat to sovereignty, which I imagine they would also apply onto the EU. Having trouble staying awake, I'm sorry. Whew. Tough night. Tough day. Alright. The show must go on, though. Huh. Do I have a stream right now? I got banned twice earlier. I do not favor the right to privacy because it allows those at the top in business and government to justify their hidden affairs, usually surrounding money. I don't know what you mean. What are you trying to ask? I don't really know. Anyways. Epic rap battle of history, Faith Goldie versus Lauren Southern. Oh, God. Spare me that, please. You ever seen a really bad TV show? Hey, Matt. Thank you for the $5 super chat. In Quebec right now, gonna speak English and talk about how I like Muslims to trigger the nationalists. Oh, God. Best of luck. All right. If you ever seen a really bad movie or TV show that's weirdly has good representation in it, a bad movie podcast I follow, just an episode on a late '80s ET ripoff called Mac and Me, and I watched it to get all the jokes. The movie is awful, but the main character is in a wheelchair, and they actually handle it pretty well. They got a disabled actor. The kid's disability isn't the focus of the movie, and the movie doesn't act like he's broken and needs constant supervision. I think that's pretty good, especially for 34 years ago. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of time, like a lot of movies that aren't like, a lot of bad movies, as you would say, aren't made by mainstream big, big studios. So they can very much do what they want and do what they think will work or what they want to work. And I think that leads to a lot of interesting and unique things. Sometimes good, sometimes terrible. Okay. I gotta hold it together. I don't know if I can actually. I am flatlining very quick, but I'm gonna keep going. Why do people get so mad about dinosaurs having feathers now? Ignoring my own thoughts about feather dinos being awesome. I don't understand how you can consider yourself a fan of dinosaurs while rejecting the science that underlines them. I mean, my wife is like, mad at the idea of dinosaurs having feathers. I think it's just the fact that it changes their concept. Like, a lot of people built their idea of what dinosaurs are through watching Jurassic Park. And also a lot of people who are like, I don't like the idea of dinosaurs having feathers. I think it's like on the same vein as like the people who don't like Pluto not being a planet. Like, it's more of like it's based out of like, oh, the thing I was taught as a kid isn't the case anymore. So I'm just going to be mad about that. But for the most part, I don't think they care all that hard. Plus, also, it reminds people of something that I think also to a lot of people that dinosaurs are more big leathery birds or big birds than they really are lizards or reptiles. And a lot of people don't like the fact that to think of like dinosaurs as giant birds rather than like being like, lizards. When am I gonna make that long-awaited video about trains? Oh, it's a joke. I'd be so bad at a video about trains. Feathered dinos are cool. I agree. It's gonna be a giant 6-foot turkey. With all this increasing queer hate and fear-mongering, do you think that rainbow capitalism will cease by next Pride? I don't know. Like, I think that there's, like, the thing is that there's, like, a big gap between this sort of progressivism of pop culture and the progress and like the people, and I think that rainbow capitalism still has quite a ways to go because gay people still have money. How pissed would people be if they put feathers on the Toronto Raptors mascot? They'd be pretty pissed. There would definitely be like an uproar about that, but that has to do with changing their sports. And also the idea of like, we're going to change the Raptors logo to make it more scientifically accurate does feel like a weird choice to make. Should leftists join the Socialist Rifle Association? I mean, I have limits on the things that I can safely say on a public platform. I will start with that. I have had many thoughts in recent weeks that have been like, oh, I can't tweet that because I will get kicked off of the platform. But I do think that there is an interesting disparity in Western politics where especially because of like, had a whole chat about this, that because of like the sort of civil rights model of doing activism, we have actually sort of trained a lot of like quote unquote left wing activism to shy away from militants and militarism and using like violent tactics and stuff like that. And the other side did not. And if we're like headed to like a years of lead type situation, it would not be good if only one side had all of the weapons. And so I do think to an extent that it is, that if you feel that you are under enough threat that you feel like that you feel the need to defend yourself, I don't see a problem with that. I'm not as hardcore about gun control as like some other people would be in the same sort of North American vibe. I still think that guns make a lot of like impulses to violence a lot easier and have a higher casualty count. And so, gun control does have like its place and stuff like that. But there is a sort of extremist view of that like, we should just ban all guns. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I trust the state in that kind of situation. And I don't know how comfortable I am with the fact that the left has spent the last several decades conceding all of its militarized power to the right. But I also think that there are things to handle coming crises that are more effective than getting a weapon. That is also the case to me. Have you and Scott considered doing it's probably not aliens on the Flatwoods monster? It's a West Virginia cryptid that is straight up an alien out of a flying saucer, complete with a G-Man in suit cover-up subplot. I mean, this is the first I've heard about it, but I could put it in my thing, I guess. Put in my Notion database. Let's do it. Doing some live stuff. Put that in my, I don't know, idea. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Given how much has changed and what the Supreme Court is looking at with Moore v. Harper, do you think that there would be the possibility of a defense for military service members who want to leave the service in the next few years? Wait, okay. Given how much has changed and what the Supreme Court is looking at to do in Moore v. Harper, there could be the possibility of a defense for military service members who want to leave the service in the next few years. Not sure what you mean by that, and I don't really want to speculate, so I'll just move on. Do you think the maker movement and or the open source hardware / software movement could lead to a gradual shift to a more collective / collaborative society / economy? Maybe. I do think that if we can, I do think that there is a lot of there's a lot of potential in a future where like, okay, at the moment there's some things that are in the process where we are still in the early days of the 3D printer, and it's still very, like, I have a 3D printer. It's still very technical work, and there's still very finicky devices, and there's still like operating one is still a hobby in and of itself, I guess is what I'm trying to say. If we ever get to the point where 3D printers are a lot more reliable and a lot more consumer focused, where it's very much just like, you know, set it and forget it, and you can just download whatever you want and just let it do its thing. If we ever get to that point, I do think that, you know, when you know, you get to the point where someone actually could download a car, or at least download a whole lot of the things that they need, that could lead to a very big shift into a lot of, it could be a very big shift for our economy in a lot of interesting ways. I don't think it's like, you know, like we wouldn't be able to replace all manufacturing with that kind of stuff, but I think that it could have some profound impacts if every house had like a sort of plug and play, you know, if every house had like a sort of plug and play 3D printer, I think that there's some interesting ramifications for that. But at the moment, 3D printers aren't really there. They are still they're still very simple at this point, and they're still like they're still very much like they're complicated and difficult to use to the point where you have to put in a lot of effort to get them to do what you want them to do today. But if that does happen, I could see some very interesting changes happen. A friend of mine printed a D&D miniature for me that was pretty neat. Yeah. It is pretty cool. Like, 3D printers are pretty cool devices. And like I said, they are there's a lot of potential in them. It's just the technology is at this point where, like, to make a print, you have to set it up. There's in order to make a printed 3D object right now, you have to buy a printer, which, like, you know, that is a lot easier than it used to be. You don't necessarily have to put it together yourself as you used to. You still have to do a bit of work. Then you have to buy a lot of very strange equipment that you probably don't normally buy. Like, you either have to buy spools of that plastic stuff, or in the case of mine, I had to buy like UV sensitive resin, which also came with like a bunch of other side purchases that you have to make it work. Like, you have to buy a bunch of shop towels. You have to buy a aspirator, like a you know, a mask, to like a filtered mask. You have to have, like, you know, proper disposal. You have to have it has to be in like a highly ventilated room. And like, there's still like, and like, to make one, you have to also, there's a lot of processing involved. Like, to make a print, you still have to at least watch a YouTube tutorial. And if anything goes wrong, you're going to have to just grit your teeth and figure out what's wrong with it. There's no like 3D printer repairman who comes by and fixes your printer. They can be very finicky, and a lot of really random things can make a print not work. And sometimes you have to figure out troubleshoot what's wrong with the print. And it could be things like them being sliced in weird ways. It could be like a slight imbalance with your FEP or whatever like that, which leads to the model not sticking to the FEP as well and falling into the vat. Like there's all sorts of it's still like a very finicky technology that still requires like quite a bit to figure out and do properly. And that's less the case for like if we can get past that point and get to the point where 3D printing is very much just like, here is a box that you pour 3D printer stuff into, and then you just push a button and the thing that you want comes out. That's where things are going to change. That's when I think that we're going to see the real big change with 3D printers. At the moment, though, they're still not quite there yet. They're still very much for hobbyists. They're like at the point that computers were when people bought computer kits and like built like, their own computers at home as a hobby, like in the 1970s or 80s. How do you model the 3D printing assets? Any 3D program will do. Yeah, pretty much any 3D program. You export it into like a STL file or whatever like that. And then once you get the STL file, you actually have to, like, you can export it from anything like Blender or anything like that. But then you just have to, or even like AutoCAD or something. But then you have to put it in something called a slicer, which is a program that basically creates the way that your printer is going to print the different layers of the print. And you have to like adjust its angle so that, say, the supports work properly. There's a bunch of different ways that you can print it so that like, that if you don't do it the right way, there might be problems with how it prints and everything like that. So there's a lot of different still weird quirks that you have to work through. But if we can, like I said, if we can get over that aspect, if we can make the, what was the first really like, all-in-one thing? Like the Apple II? Like when the Apple II of 3D printers comes out, that's going to be, I think that's going to be a game changer. That's my take. You reject the Apple II as the first all-in-one PC? Okay. What would you call the first all-in-one PC? Commodore 64? But either way, you know what I'm going with. What effect do you think Boris Johnson's resignation is going to have on Brexit? I don't know. Didn't Brexit already happen? Like, UK is out. It's why, like, people aren't able to find, like, milk in the grocery stores and stuff like that. So, I think that the what's it called? The main, I couldn't even speculate what's going on with British politics. But my guess is that it probably means there's going to be another election, which means that you have to deal with probably the first British election where Keir Starmer is the leader of the Labour Party, which means that the UK is going to probably, like, that's probably just going to be like a complete shitty election up and down. I think a Keir Starmer plus, like, the kind of chaos, like, I feel like the only thing I don't think anything's really, I don't know what's going to change, really. I don't know what next step there is for all this kind of stuff, except that Scotland's probably looking at Europe and thinking, man, the euro looks real good right now. Because didn't Nicola Sturgeon just announce there was going to be a new there's going to be a new referendum? And also, like, I think the more interesting political questions in the UK are what happens with the fact that Sinn Féin is now Sinn Féin is now a force in Northern Ireland, and the fact that there's now going to be another referendum. I don't know when the next referendum is going to be. And yeah, like how much Keir Starmer is probably going to lead the Labour Party to ruin, so... So we'll see how that goes. If Scotland has a successful referendum, who knows what's going to happen with Sinn Féin in Northern Ireland? Northern Ireland join Ireland? Who knows? I don't know where they... I don't know where... I haven't heard much about Northern Ireland. I don't know where they are at the moment. Plus, like, I don't know if Ireland want... Like, isn't, like, Northern Ireland, like, freaking insane? Like, isn't, like, Northern Ireland, like, where, like, that weird hyper right-wing, like, DUP party was? But who knows? It'd be interesting. Alrighty. Have I heard of the book How to Hide an Empire, A History of the Greater United States by Daniel Immerwahr? No, I haven't. Sounds interesting, though. Alrighty. So, looks like the Northern Ireland issue is not going to be that much of a thing. I am curious what's going on with Gibraltar. Has there... What's the situation with Brexit and Gibraltar? That feels like a pretty complicated situation. Anyways. Just popped by to say, hey, love your work and you're pretty darn awesome. Well, thank you, BP Phantom. Much appreciated. All right. Next question is to hear about Shinzo Abe getting game ended. Yes. Yeah, that what's it called? It happened the same day because we woke up on Friday morning and half of Canada's internet went out. So I had no internet all day on Friday. Yeah, Shinzo Abe was assassinated by a guy with a homemade shotgun. Pretty wild. All right, next up we got, why do you think American gun culture is so right-wing or the lack of leftist paramilitary organizations compared to the heavily armed right? They do exist in other countries, like the Colombian president used to be in one, and back in the day, people would get into gunfights with the Pinkertons and the feds. I think it has to do, like, there's a bigger picture in that has to do with the fact the role of sort of like the civil rights movement on. I talked about this in an earlier question about the role of the civil rights movement on the American liberal activist class, and how like Martin Luther King's dedication to nonviolence and that sort of mythology built up around the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s has instilled in a lot of left-wing politics, a lot of left-wing activism, this lionization of a lot of things that are not particularly effective forms of political change. And yeah, in many ways, that meant like anti-militarized stuff. And also, it doesn't also help that a lot of the NRA turned into like this far right organization because it was trying to appeal to the conservative base in order to basically advance the sales interests of arms manufacturers. So there's that aspect too. So, yeah, it's it might be an interesting video someday to talk about American gun culture and the sort of impact of like because of how the American liberal activist class is so against militarized action that it results in their politicians not really being afraid of them. So Democrats don't really feel like they need to do anything for their constituencies, while Republicans are like, a little bit more afraid of their voter base. BHB did a good two-parter on the guy who turned NRA. Is BHB behind the bastards? On the other hand, the mythologizing of nonviolence, the civil rights movement. On the other hand, the government is moving towards more punitive towards left-wing movements. Yeah, there is that too. There is the fact that it is in America. It's been objectively more dangerous to be a left-wing militant than it is to be a right-wing militant. Like there were left-wing militants in the 1970s. It's just that the FBI focused way more on trying to put them down compared to right-wing militants. So there is the fact that a lot of the people who would have perpetuated organizations and stuff like that would have promoted left-wing militancy have largely been, targeted and taken out by law enforcement as well. Alrighty. All right. When we argue for abortion rights to conservatives, we typically bring up three groups: rape victims, pregnant children, and people who are too poor to afford to look after a kid. Does that actually undermine the idea that it's a right, i.e. a thing that you don't have to justify to do because it implies that you should only get an abortion if having a child be sufficiently hard for you? Right after the Roe decision leaked, one of the podcasts I listened to, the Lib Law Guy's other podcast, ironically, did an episode where the host talked to his co-host, a psychology professor, about the fact that she felt excluded but made pro-choice arguments because she had an abortion, and it wasn't because she couldn't raise a child. It's because that she was a 25-year-old grad student, and having a baby would have presented her with living the life she wanted to. She had an abortion just because she didn't want to be a mother, and yeah, I think that in many ways that's I think that you're trying to think about the liberal argument about it, like in many ways like. The cases of rape and incest and these abortions, it's from this sort of middle ground that people try to make, where they're trying to appeal to people who are anti-abortion, in order to get them to agree with it. So it is in many ways it's an argument that's coming from trying to meet the anti-choice people halfway. And I see there's some value to that. I think that it doesn't argue from first principles. It argues from, like, think about these cases of these people. Like, shouldn't that trigger your sympathy enough to realize, like, this is a little bit more complicated than the way you're talking about it? But I think that there's obviously more important, deeper conversations to have, for everybody to have. And that is a key aspect to it. But yeah, like, at the end of the day, I think it is not the whole argument, and in many ways it's just the way that people who are like kind of like trying to centristly triangulate between different forms of between these two positions are the people who make those kinds of arguments. Thoughts on the recent announced second Scottish independence referendum? Honestly, yeah, I get it. If I was in Scotland, because Scotland voted overwhelmingly to stay in the EU, and the UK voted to leave, so Scotland kind of got forced into that decision. And then, Brexit has been nothing but a disaster for the British people. So if I was in Scotland, I'd be like, yeah, I want to leave the UK so that I can rejoin Europe. That makes sense to me. Am I familiar with the manga/anime Spriggan? An adaptation recently came out on Netflix and be kind of described as Indiana Jones meets ancient civilization, hypertechnology, and God, more militaristic science fiction. Seems right up your alley. Yeah, it could be. It does sound kind of interesting. I'm not usually a big fan of anime, but I can give it a look. And also, on the abortion thing, the vast majority of abortions are done, not vast majority, but the majority of abortions are not done by people, are not even done by those horrible edge cases. And they're not even done by people who don't want kids. In fact, if you ask anybody who actually, works in these clinics and stuff like that, most abortions are done by people who already have kids. And they just don't want more. And, that's the thrust, and it's oh my god, yeah, of course, that's the main thing. I mean, there's other more philosophical reasons, like that whole one that's in the Philosophy Tube video about if somebody required, required one of your kidneys to live, and it was only your kidney that would work, and it would actively put you in danger and be a detriment to your health, but if you didn't volunteer that organ, that person would die. I think most people would agree that you shouldn't feel like the government should have the right to obligatorily take your organ, right? Yet, for some reason, when it's pregnancy, that is the case. And I think it has more to do with the fact that a lot more anti-abortion people are more anti-sex than they are pro-life or whatever, because a lot of those anti-abortion people are still very pro-death penalty and very much not for giving children any government benefits or anything like that. So it is very much, I think, more of a desire to have a state of affairs where people can be punished for having sex. What's my opinion on Extinction Rebellion? They've been doing some cool stuff lately. They seem okay. I always hear stuff that they're a little bit weird in a liberally way, but I don't know, they're at this point, anybody who is fighting to keep to keep what's it called? Anybody who's fighting to stop the breakdown of our biosphere is cool with me, I guess. Sorry if I'm like a little bit zoning out a little bit. I am extremely tired. I'm fighting to stay awake. So I'm gonna try to keep going, but holy shit, just my brain is just a fucking scrambled egg right now. I was watching a video about anti-communism among Vietnamese Americans. An uploader said, yeah, Vietnam is a one-party state with limited freedom of speech, but they have great social programs, and that are an emerging economy. Isn't this just the left version of people who hand-waved that Pinochet did, saying he pulled an economic miracle in Chile? Yes, to an extent. I mean, Chile, the Pinochet government made life objectively terrible for Chileans. I think the main thing is that it's, again, I don't know why it's always coming up. It's the difference between liberal and socialist concepts of freedom. I talked about this in the video I made for the Cold War years and years ago. That liberals conceive freedom in these very abstract notions. To them, they see freedom as your freedom to believe whatever you want, your freedom to say whatever you want. While not really caring about your right to have a house, to have food, to have a job, those kinds of things. While a socialist sees freedom more as being free of the harshness of material needs. Can you really be free if you don't have clothes or a house or food or anything like that? And so socialists see progress in that aspect. And in many ways, Chile's quote-unquote economic miracle did not help the average Chilean. It was very much for the wealthy upper crust. So bleh. All right. All right. Let's see. In the book I'm reading, the main character is a history grad student. The book basically turns the PhD thesis as if it's the same as turning a book. Book basically treats turning in a PhD thesis as if it's the same as turning in a book report in middle school. He hands in his PhD thesis to his supervisor who's never seen it before, and it's implied the supervisor doesn't like... If the supervisor doesn't like it, he just doesn't get his doctorate. He doesn't go away and change it. That's ridiculous, right? Yeah. Your dissertation you are working on with your supervisor for years. And you're not even going to... And also... It's not your supervisor who decides whether or not it passes. There's a whole committee involved. When you do your PhD, you are working for years with your supervisor to make a project that is ready to go. And they're not even going to submit it unless your supervisor is pretty convinced that what you have is submittable. To the point where most, I don't think anybody has ever seen a PhD... it's very rare for a PhD defense to actually fail. And when you do go to defend your PhD, it's not like you have to... First of all, you have to defend it, which means that you have a committee of people read it, and then you go into a room and they basically ask you questions about it and propose different changes and stuff like that. And usually, they don't fail you. Even if you do poorly, it usually means that you have significant edits. But what they will do is they will say that you succeeded in defending your thesis. You just have to go and do a bunch of edits for them to be happy. So yeah, it doesn't work anything like that. Thoughts on Bernie Sanders, Islam, and immigration? Bernie Sanders is a politician. He's one that I have worked on his campaign twice. He's basically the best hope that America had for having a real left-wing populist uprising that was quashed by a center-right Democratic Party. And I don't know what's going to happen after that, because there's really no strong left-wing successor for him. I don't know, like, Islam is such a huge topic to have thoughts on. It's a religion it's like the second largest religion on earth or something like that. It's a massive religion that is big and complex and full of a lot of different things. So I don't know what I could think about a religion. And immigration, like, as a concept, the people have been moving for thousands of years. People have been moving from one place to another since the people could move. So I don't know. It's just a thing. I don't imagine. I think people are saying in the chat that I don't really think that there's much that question was really asked in much good faith anyway. Isn't AOC trying to be a successor to Bernie? I think that she might think that she's doing something like that, possibly. I don't know if she's like really trying to, like, I think she's trying to do her own thing. But in many ways, she's the closest thing that there is to one. Like, there really isn't another, like, strong left-wing leader who is younger than Bernie. Because the thing is that, like, the Cold War and Cold War propaganda has kind of made it so that, like, every time you go to, like, a socialist organization, it's either very, very young people or very, very old people. That sort of, like, baby boomer and Gen X generation really just did not get into socialism at all. When, like, you know, like, AOC being the successor to Bernie is troublesome because, like, the 2024 election is the first election in which she can meet the minimum age that someone can run for president. And, like, nobody has won the presidency that young. Like, there isn't. This is why Bernie was sort of the last chance for a long time, because there is no other person who is that well entrenched in American politics who has the sort of experience and cachet to make a run for the presidency that is of a strong left, that actually has, like, a left-wing opinion on things. But I hope that if AOC stays in politics and becomes more established, that she might be able to do something interesting. I'm hoping that she I'm thinking that she might at some point try to run for, like, senator of New York or something. That'd be interesting. I don't really know too much about Ro Khanna. So what happens if the top level of U.S. Democrats retires, dies, and there's little to no bench of the upper mid-levels? Dems just fall into obscurity and we get effectively a one-party state under the Republicans. The state-level Democratic parties are not great, looking at West Virginia and Alabama. Especially your leadership using a hard R to refer to black members. What happens if there is a lot of turnover / good candidates in the lower levels of the party, but now it's hollowed out from the structure at the top? Yeah, there's not a lot of great leadership after the sort of, like, current like cohort of rulers ends. There's really not a lot of people who are really strongly geared up to take over, and that will be a problem for the Democrats. And to the point where, like, some people have said that, like, the Democratic Party, under, like, an effective one-party rule by the Republicans, might just splinter into a bunch of regional parties because they're very, divided. Off topic and just getting on the stream, loving the lower deck shirt. Thank you. I like it a lot. How bad was Canada Day this year? I didn't really pay attention to much. Again, this year I've been so checked out in what's going on around me that for Canada this year, I just saw my family. They just came over and we had some food and then they went home. And that's it. What do you think of the French left cooperation between several parties? Mélenchon denied Macron a majority by building a solidarity and reducing vote splitting. I don't know. Did I buy that t-shirt recently? I'm guessing you did it because it actually fits. I bought this like a few months ago. I can't remember exactly when, but it was probably earlier this year sometime. As far as the French left-wing coalition goes, I don't really know enough about French politics to be able to speak too much on it. I mean, it sounds encouraging, but I don't know how encouraging it really is because I'm not really like we don't, what's it called? I don't have Vosh syndrome here. I'm not, just because I'm a white guy doesn't mean I have, I can talk about any subject, or I can have a strong opinion on any subject, whether or not I've done any reading on it whatsoever. So, I will safely say that I don't really know that much about French politics, and so I can't really say much about what is going on there. All right. All right, let's see. In the World War timeline, human-computer technology in the early 1960s is far more in line with what humans had in the late 80s/early 90s because technology stolen from the lizards. Setting aside the alien stuff, what do you think the civil rights movement would have been like if online organizing was a thing people could do? Good question. Because while the opportunity for communicating and coordinating is much higher, the opportunity for suppression and division is much higher too. And also a lot less of like a local aspect to it. I honestly don't know. A civil rights movement where they had the internet? I don't have the brain power to really give a good answer for that, but my guess is that the cruelty of, like, the segregation South would be much more apparent to a lot of the people who lived in white suburbs in the North who were less strong. So I feel like maybe the civil rights movement would have been even stronger. But it also means that like authorities would have more ability to, track down and stop people who are involved in it. So which side of that wins? I don't know. All right. What would be the complications of having unicameral legislature where the number of seats is determined by the square foot of the total population per latest census? If the population was 324 million, then the legislature would have 18,000 members for certainly 18,000 people each rather than the sheer scale. Well, that's sort of how it is. That's representation by population. That's how it is in Canada. I don't know what to say on that, but that's how most countries would be. That's how most countries are. There's just no Senate. All right. I can do this. I got 3 more questions. I might wrap up the stream early because I really am having trouble staying awake, but let's do this. I'm thinking about this the other day. The conspiracy left aren't even that different from their right counterparts by bringing up American imperialism. One of Alex Jones's whataboutism when he was first getting pushed back for his Sandy Hook lies was to say, you make a fuss about these kids, but not the 90,000 Iraqi children Bush killed. How can you both right and ostensibly left people actually use actual American war crimes so ghoulishly? I don't know. I can't really think about how people could do that. How dare they? Okay. Do you think the next 100 years we would see a slow collapse of American empire, or do you think it's more likely to keep chugging on for a while? I mean, we're seeing it right now. I think that the U.S. has. I think that the war on terror overextended the U.S. empire, and like China's already ready to edge them out economically. Like I think that the fact that like the U.S. is so like they can't really do much in Ukraine and everything like that is showing that like U.S. imperialism is already waning in a pretty big way. The fact that Russia is acting as ballsy as it is, I think, speaks to that. Did you all hear about the conservatives getting mad that people were saying white supremacists like to wave Canada's old flag? Why are we this many years after Charlottesville and people still can't understand the far right uses obtuse symbols? Because that would involve having to pay attention to things, and paying attention is hard. I'm learning, but not like just because like we like obsessively look over the far right doesn't mean that like everybody else does, I guess. Yeah, okay. If you and Scott need a IPNA topic, it's just an easy one. May I suggest Puma Man? It's an Italian mockbuster trying to make money off Superman, but a guy who gets powers from aliens who visited the ancient Aztecs. There's also disco fight scenes, terrible green screenshots, and the best acting that you can get from actors who can't speak Italian, and a director who can't speak English. Oh boy. That does sound fun. All right. Friends, I am sorry to have to call the stream early, but I literally, I'm just like nodding off. I'm like unable to think. So I'm going to have to end things a little bit early. I'm really sorry. I'm going to raid Lumiru. But I'll be back next week. Inshallah, Mia will be there. It'll be really fun. But yeah, I'm sorry about this. But yeah, have a good time. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Get some sleep, or else you're gonna end up like me. Be good. I did finish all the questions, so that's good. So, peace out. I'm just gonna set the thing up. Sorry about that. Be all right. See you guys soon. I'll take care.